Hello, everyone. It's great to actually, I can't see you, but it's great to know that you're here. Thank you for inviting me to come and join you. Again, my name is Christopher, and my job is head of accessibility and disability inclusion for EMEA at Google. And what this means is I'm responsible to make sure all of our products are accessible, make sure that Google as a place to work is a place where people with disabilities can thrive. And by focusing here in EMEA is to bring an understanding of what disability means across Europe, across Africa, and the Middle East. Because you can't take technology invented by people that look like me in Mountain View, California, and assume it's going to work the way you want it to for people with disabilities, especially in a place like Africa. So something you can't expect something that works perfectly in Mountain View to work perfectly for someone who has aphasia in Kinshasa, for example. So when my coming here is about bringing this understanding of bringing an understanding of disability back into Google so we can make our products better and make our platforms better so people can make their products using our platform. So let's begin. So why is inclusion important? Why don't we always just do it automatically? Well, 99% of our DNA is common, but like brothers and sisters in a family, those differences will tend to be exaggerated or they'll be ignored. But to me, at least, if we are more than 99% similar, I feel there's an obligation we have to be there for each other. And to me, the work in accessibility inclusion is an important way of doing this. We are here to help each other. We're here to make each other's lives better. And by doing this, we feel better, they feel better, and the world becomes a better place. And also, it's good business. But a bit about me, because my path here isn't a traditional one. I'm a failed musician. I studied music in university, and I wanted to be an opera singer, but I wasn't very good. Fortunately, I was raised in an area called Cupertino, California, where Apple Computers was founded. And I just happened to get a job at Apple. So I spent 10 years there working on hardware and software. I worked on the first iPod, the first iTunes, the G4 towers, G5 towers, Final Cut Studio. And then I wanted to go out and I joined Sony Ericsson to make mobile phones. And I even spent a year at Disney Mobile making games. And then I finally came to Google, where I am now. And I've been here for 10 years coming in April of next year. So it's been one heck of a ride for a music major. But it wasn't until I was at Google is where I realized what accessibility was. Because my product wasn't accessible. I was the lead technical program manager for Google Play Music. And a test engineer came into our meeting, turned on voiceover, and I heard button, 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 button. I asked, what's that? And she said, well, this is Google Play Music for someone who's blind. I said, that's stupid. How do they use it? And she said, well, that's why I'm here. That's what I learned what accessibility meant. That's what I learned about what it was. Everything I had done, the previous 17, 18 years had nothing to do with disability. I hadn't even thought about it. I didn't know it was a thing. And here was this opportunity to take it. So I did. Within a couple months, I volunteered to take on accessibility for Google Play, the suite of products for Google Play, as a 20% here at Google. And I hired that test engineer as a program manager on my team to teach me what I needed to know. She is of the community. She was a PhD, and she's actually running the program herself now after I left. So that's how I discovered what accessibility is. And from there, I worked on Daydream, our VR platform. And for the past 4 years, I've been doing the central accessibility work in terms of making all of our products accessible. Enough about me. But what about Google accessibility? Why does Google do this? Well, accessibility is actually a part of our mission statement. Our mission statement is to make the world's information, is to take the world's information and organize it and make it universally accessible and useful. Let me unpack this a bit. Universally accessible means that everyone can use our products. We don't expect users to have to adapt themselves to use our products. And with this mantra, we design and build our Google Magic, all of our products, but in particular, some of the most exciting AT that we've been building is using this Google Magic of machine learning and artificial intelligence. And with these tools, we can make our products and more importantly, the world around us more accessible for more users in more situations. And when we talk about the world's information, it's not just the things on your device, on your laptop, on your phone. It's the real world. How to make the real world more interesting, more inclusive, and more participatory. And why do we do this? Because there's a lot of people that are impacted. The WHO says there's 15% of the world's population has some kind of disability. That's more than 1 billion people. And these are just the people who are self-identified. And for them, our tools, assistive technology, or even accessible technology can be dramatically life-changing. But then you take one step out, and those of us who are not identified with a disability, or like myself, didn't realize you had one, I just thought I was bad at certain things. The tools we build can help them. And then the people who support the people with disabilities, the friends and families of them, they will support those tools, and they'll support those people who need it. And then frankly, everybody's impacted by technology that is well designed and thought of with people with disabilities. For example, if you're walking with a baby in one arm, in essence, you have one arm because the other arm is busy. Or if you're looking at your cell phone in a bright sun, not happening here in England these days, but if you don't have good contrast, you're not going to be able to see well because everything sort of blurs together. So by being thoughtful in how you create your products, you make a better overall product, and you make more truly helpful, innovative experiences for everyone. A well-designed product is a delight to use, whether you're disabled or not. Excuse me. But when it comes to building inclusively, I need to tell you there's a little secret. There's always going to be some intentional exclusion whenever you build any kind of product, because there's always going to be constraints in your product. You don't have enough time, you don't have enough money, you don't have enough resources. You always have to choose what you want to do. And if you don't have a culture where accessibility is built in, if things are born accessible, as Larry Goldberg likes to say from Verizon, if it's not part of what you do always, you need to be able to focus on it. You need to make sure that it's there. But also when it comes to building products, you have to focus. And if your products aren't born accessible, you need to be aware that it's an issue. It's something you have to think about. And if it's not part of your built-in process, if you can't make things born accessible, you need to make sure it's above the line. In program management speak, there's a thing called Agile, where you have a list of things that you want to work off, and you pop things off the top, and there's a line of the stuff you're going to get done. So when you hear program managers like me talk about keeping things above the line, that's what it means. Make sure it's always part of what you consider, if it's not part of what you automatically do. Because if you don't plan, you'll be like me 7 years ago with Google Play Music with button, 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 button. Or you'll have content. Your content is inaccessible. Or even when it comes to building hardware, you take a look at this old Samsung phone here, you see that the finger sensor is off to the right. Or if you can't see, there is a Samsung phone here with a finger sensor off to the right. And then there's the photo sensor and then a flash. What happened is that people were getting their fingers all and smudging the camera sensor because they're trying to find the fingerprint sensor to unlock their phone. Bad for lefties and bad for photos. But with some planning, you can create an experience that is accessible. Menu, button, search, button, home screen, 1 of 2. You can let the technology describe what's there. You'll have content that's accessible. And here's 2 photos of Samsung where you have the camera sensors, and then underneath it, centered, you'll have the fingerprint sensor. And one extra thing that's really interesting for me about what they did is they also have a little tactile section around it. So you have always a place where your finger knows where it needs to go. So when you do these things, it's inclusive for everybody. So when it comes to building inclusively, there are 3 key things I like to think about, and I'll show you some examples of what these mean. The first is leverage your strengths. Do what you're good at. Think about a musician. Think about a heavy metal guitarist who's really, really good at doing these really complicated things on their guitar, or a jazz musician where you have to improvise. You don't want to just be learning chopsticks and in a computer metaphor perspective or process metaphor, and you need to improvise, to create something that's meaningful for people with disabilities. So do what you're good at, do what you're experienced in, and you can create something that's really powerful. The most important thing is nothing about us without us. This is an old expression in the community. And what it means is involve people with disabilities throughout the entire process where you can. If you can't, test with them. Where you can, hire them, build with them, design with them, get them throughout the entire process, because then only then are you going to solve the problem that you really need to. And finally, if that gets too scary and you don't know where to start with one. Start with one person, solve one person's problem, build on it, grow it, and you'll be able to create a solution or create solutions for your product that are really resonant and have meaning for everybody. But start with one person, start with one problem. So I'm going to talk about two innovations from Google. The first is called Project Relate, and this is brand new. I think we launched it 3 weeks ago. And the problem we were trying to solve is that speech recognition doesn't work well for people who have speech impairments or really heavy accents. The creation of technology like audio software recognition, like you would see it in your Google Meet or your Zoom, is difficult. The technology is based off people's voices that is broad and understandable, and we have lots of data so we can create these models. But for people who have non-typical speech patterns, there isn't a lot of data for this. So we created a thing called Project Euphonia, and through Project Euphonia, we gathered data from many people. I think like 1 million hours of data. And with this, we've been able to create a technology that is the basis of what we have here with Project Relate. So the first step of the research is to get this standard data. And this is a picture of Dimitri, one of the architects of the technology, recording samples of his voice to build up that base core set. And then you take the raw audio data, and then you make a visual representation and you label it. So we tell the computer how to recognize it and what's there. And then you put it through a convolutional neural net, which is a big fancy way of saying a big black box that does magic. This is that Google magic I talked about. This is machine learning, artificial intelligence. And with this information, we can create the real-time transcription. But it's this raw audio data is where we need the data of people with disabilities so we can create models that work for them. What Project Relate is a really interesting new project that we've released that allow people to create their own models for themselves. And let me show you a little video about that.
My name is Julie Catio. I'm a product manager at Google in the research team. Project Relate started in 2018 when we realized that our speech recognition technology could be improved to help people with speech impairments be better understood. Standard speech recognition doesn't always work as well for people with atypical speech because the algorithms have not been trained on samples of their speech. So we decided to create an app that would be custom trained on individuals' unique speech patterns.
We named the app Relate because of what it enables you to do.
To use the app, the first step is to record a set of phrases so it can get to know how you speak. The Relate app has 3 built-in features: Listen, Repeat, and Assistant. Listen transcribes everything you're saying in real time.
So I have a custom voice model now. And
Repeat repeats what you've just said in a clear computerized voice.
next thing I do, hot chocolate.
Hot chocolate.
Ah, gotcha.
Thank you.
Assistant connects directly with your Google Assistant.
Take a selfie.
Okay, get ready.
I hope I live to see the day when disabled people can move through the world and accept the same level of connection as everyone else has.
So this is Project Relate, a really powerful application that does 3 things. It creates a dedicated voice model for you, the person who has the application. It'll transcribe your speech in real time. You can copy paste it into apps or let people read what you want them to see. Repeat, it'll restate what you've done, what you've said in a clear voice, as you saw with Aubrey ordering her hot chocolate. Or it'll speak directly into your Google Assistant from within the app, so you can take the selfie or turn on the lights or play a song that you like. Next is an area of captions where we've spent a lot of time over the past handful of years really diving deep into this technology that we have of speech, of audio technologies. So we created about 3 years ago, Live Transcribe, and now it's Live Transcribe and Sound Notifications. What Live Transcribe does, it can provide you real-time transcription over 80 different languages, and you can reply by typing your words. So if you choose not to speak or you can't speak well, you can type your response back. So you have the opportunity to have a real conversation. Another thing that's of concern for people who are deaf or hard of hearing is situational awareness. So we can provide you notifications on your phone or on your Android watch, telling you when there is an event has happened, like a car alarm or a smoke alarm or a baby crying, or even just when someone's calling your name, we can flash the light or vibrate when someone calls your name. So we're using this technology to provide real awareness and ability to interact with people around you. And you see this man here on the left? This is the same Dimitri you saw a moment ago. Dimitri is one of our architects of our speech recognition technology. And he and Chet to his right are the co-creators of Live Transcribe. Let me teach you a bit about that with this video.
I'm set.
Yeah.
Ready?
I completely lost hearing when I was already a year old. Technology provides tremendous opportunities to help people with disabilities. I'm a research scientist at Google, and I'm developing speech recognition in technology. Speech recognition accuracy finally became so good that I could fulfill my dream for whole life, to use speech recognition to communicate with people. Hello,
Hello, how are you?
I'm fine, and how are you?
I'm doing good. What can I get you today?
I would like tea. Like Transcribe is an application that runs in Android. It provides transcription of speech for deaf and hard of hearing in real time.
Dimitri worked with the speech team to develop that technology, and Google has made strides in this in the past couple of years, but the app itself is what I've been working on. I'm not an Android engineer. I saw an opportunity for something useful and dug into that and kind of evolved naturally.
Did I already mention to you I'm having one of...
I don't want to hear about his party. So this application, this Live Transcribe, really demonstrates all three of these things really clearly. It is doing what you're good at. With Google, it's the speech recognition technology, the machine learning, the artificial intelligence. It's the never about us without us. Dimitri is deaf. He's part of a community trying to solve something for himself. And therefore, it's also the start with one. We're trying to solve his problem. But he did it with Chet. They did this because they wanted to communicate and work together. So Chet literally wrote the prototype for this application over a weekend once they realized that things had gotten to where they wanted to go. So it's a huge opportunity, and this has become one of our most successful pieces of assistive technology that Android provides. So then we have this technology, and it's great. But then we think about what can we do to make it better? What can we do to further improve the lives of people who are deaf or hard of hearing? And providing captions for real life is an important thing. So a little later, we took this Live Transcribe application and the models that it uses and shrunk it down so it could be used on your handset without any kind of data connection. And then we created a concept called live captions, where we provide local private captions, today in English, soon to be in other languages, for any audio, almost any audio source that has been sent onto your phone. So if social media if you're browsing Twitter or Facebook or whatever, and you see something without captions, we can provide captions for you. Or if someone sends you an audio note, we'll caption it for you. Or if someone sends you a video of their birthday party or someone eating a donut, we'll provide captions of that. There's no processing in the cloud. It all happens there on your phone. So anything you have can have this information, this captioning brought to you. And then we thought, what can you do with captions that makes it even more powerful? And this is the last video I'm going to show. And this, for me, really brings home all of these things together.
I hesitated for a few seconds, and I realized the enormity of it, what it really meant. I'm 55 years old, and for the first time, I was able to call my son.
This is Matthew. He likes to swim in cold water.
After a swim, you feel alive.
Like really, really cold water.
I also swam across the English Channel.
But that's another story. Matthew is deaf.
People think if I got a hearing aid on, I could hear everything, and that's not true. I lip read most of the time. I have 2 boys, and they're both very important part of my life.
This is Matthew's youngest son.
Hi, I'm Harry.
He lives in Hong Kong and plays rugby.
I always want to keep in touch with him. Before, I need to communicate with him through Zoom or WhatsApp. I would try and lip read him, but it's really hard because it's not 3D, it's a flat screen. When I got the Google Picture phone, because the live capture feature, Harry was the first person I phoned. It was incredible. And we were talking for about half an hour. All of a sudden, he said,
Dad, do you realise this is the first time we've talked on the phone?
I was speechless for 3-4 seconds, and it realised what it really meant. I'm 55 years old, and for the first time in my life, I was able to call my son.
That's a real powerful demonstration of what this work can do. Not everybody has the opportunity to create a assistive technology from the basis of that, but there's power to being inclusive. There's power to being accessible. There is ability to allow someone to shop. There's ability to allow someone to go to school, have a job, or call their son. So as a takeaway, I want to recap the 3 points I brought up earlier. 1, leverage your strengths. Do what you're good at. Do something where you can improvise and really solve some challenging problems. 2, never write us without us. Always, always, always include the community that you're trying to serve. Only someone in the community can tell you what the problem is and what a solution is. 3, start with one. Start with one person's problem, broaden it out, create something that can be really impactful. And just get started. It is not one of those first 3, but it's probably the most important thing. If you don't get started, it'll never happen. And it's scary if you haven't done it before, but it's one of the most powerful, impactful things I've ever done in my career. Thank you. Ooh. And now I'm alone.
Hello, Christopher. It's wonderful to meet you. I know I'm a little bit late here to the party, but what a pleasure that talk was. Thank you so much for it. I think that, by the way, was also Jarin and Carrie's coming in as well. Can you hear me okay? Everything is fine on my end?
Sound great. Thank you.
It's so powerful for me because I just realized actually this is like the conversation. Hello, Jarin. Sorry for hijacking the session just right there. I had a delayed flight. That's a very long conversation. It was such a powerful moment for me when I actually realized that I'm so used to watching movies with subtitles on and captioning on. It's been, I don't know, maybe I've been doing this now for 10 years, maybe but I just realized if I don't have captions on, this is a problem for me. It really is. And it's not because I'm hard of hearing, but it's because I just realized that I can just note so many more details, and I learned the language, and there are so many positive benefits. And I think that this is a very typical thing that we have with accessibility just out of the box. It's just better for everybody just out of the box. right? And so it's just was very wonderful to see, to hear your talk as well here. Jarin, I think we have some questions, don't we?
Jarin,
you're muted, I think.
Jarin, you're on mute.
That would not be very accessible to anyone, right?
Yeah.
I can't lip read like Matthew, sorry.
Yeah. We do have a few questions from people in the audience. I'd say we do one or two now, and then we might do some later in the panel. I think the first question that we had, which I actually thought was quite interesting, because it's something that I think we've all struggled with, is how far do you go? So one of the first things that you said is, why don't we start including it in an accessibility statement, which I think is a very good start, because you kind of measure everything against it. But there's always the other side of limited resources, time, etc. So how do you still include it and kind of measure things against it if there's also the real life of budgets?
So when this situation happens, I try to remind people that a lot of the most accessible things are just well designed. So there's some very low hanging fruit that you can do to start building up the muscles of creating things that's accessible. That is making sure that your color palette is sensitive. You have good contrast for your text. You make sure that your pictures have alt text. These are very low bandwidth, easy things to implement and get done. It doesn't cost a lot of money. It just takes some thought ahead of time. And then I find when you do this, you start building up some momentum and some victories, and then you sell the victories, and there's coolness factor that gets to it, because people like getting kudos, they like being told you're doing a great job, this is really impactful, and it builds momentum. So the hardest thing is just getting started, because you feel you have to do everything. So I always try to recommend people start with the easy things and build up the muscles and build up the language, and then focus on the most important tasks that you're going to do. At Google, we talk about user journeys, and we have the concept of a primary user journey and a secondary user journey. A primary user journey is like, using Gmail as an example, sending an email or reading an email. Make sure this core thing you're going to do every single day is rock solid, because that's where if it's not accessible and useful, because remember, you can be accessible and it's such a pain to use, it might as well not be accessible. But if it's something that you can do easily and well, that's really, really important. And then focus on the secondary things, like the creation of an account, which is something you'll do once, so that's something you could do later. So if you have the ability to do one thing, do the reading email, and then postpone the other one until you have more time. So be choosy in terms of the tasks that you want to accomplish.
Yeah, I hear that. And on a very practical point, and I think because it's excellent what you're saying, we immediately got some feedback, and very true feedback, that our bingo PDF card was not very accessible, which was extremely true, and etc. But we fixed it, and it's coming to you within a couple minutes. So bear with us. Might not be the core thing in this show, but we still wanted to fix it. So that's amazing. Let's do. Can we do one more question? Yeah, let's do one more question.
I also have one, but
so
let's prioritize
our
dear attendees instead.
Let's do an attendee. So we have Lance, who's asking, what's the best source for identifying percentages of population to help identify which target we prioritize? So I think another kind of real life, where do you start? So I think you said, start in the core user journey. And I think the question is here, focus on the things which have most impact.
Who do you choose? I think I'm really who. So the population question is difficult to answer. The WHO, for example, has great statistics in terms of breakdowns, percentages, but that may not be representative of your users. So I think the most important thing is who is your user base, and understanding, though, that there is sort of a catch-22. If your product is not accessible, if for example, if you have a situation where you hear button, 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 no one who needs to use a screen reader will ever use it. So you're never going to be able to have a numbers conversation in terms of what to choose, because you're eliminating an audience entirely because of the inaccessibility. So this is why I try to talk about doing some of the easy things first, where you don't have to do all of the work that it takes to make a screen reader work, especially on the web, where it's a little more complicated. It is not as hard as people fear, but it's not as easy as it needs to be for it to be something that is easily done. So in terms of external resources, start with the WHO, and that's where I go for sort of core numbers of audience sizes. And then if you want to sort of go one level deeper, go to the different organizations that are relevant to the countries you support. There are always advocacy organizations in the different countries, and they often will have really interesting data about the population inside their country.
Right, that makes sense. May I ask a question as well, Jarin? Do we have a
Please.
moment? Yeah, I always have questions. It's interesting because I feel like we have moved beyond, and if I'm choppy, let me know. It's that maybe the Wi-Fi isn't great there.
Sounds great.
But, yeah. So I think that over the last, let's say, 7, 8, maybe years, we have moved so far in terms of accessibility. It seems to be accepted. We moved away from this notion of accessibility being just for a particular group of people towards being more inclusive, the kind of broad term and definition. And when we are working on anything at this point, I think it's going to be very difficult to find a project that just doesn't include at least some conversations about accessibility from the very start, right? So it seems to be like this is going to be included as a part of the discussion. But still, what I encounter almost every 3 to 4 weeks, talking to people of all industries, right? Because most of my time these days is also spent with companies of all sorts, where they try to solve all kind of issues, interfaces and issues. And I'm always getting asked, how can we, this is a really weird wording, how can we justify spending an enormous amount of efforts on making our full experience accessible, which is an incredible investment and effort, right? If we could just target, 80-20 and be happy. How can you argue there? I mean, what would be a really good, strong argument to kind of go against it? It's so sad to me, because that I even have to prove it in any way, or kind of have this conversation, because I feel like this is the conversations we're having. Really, is this? So, what would you say to this in this kind of situations?
Well, the answer will be different for every organization. You need to understand what motivates them. One of the biggest things that I've learned is that learning to speak the language of leadership. Learning to speak their language about what motivates them, what drives them. Is it a language of competition? Is it what are the competitors doing? Are the competitors more accessible because that's where the market is going? Sometimes it's money. It's the $8 trillion market number that you hear often talked about. The business opportunity is huge. Or you can do the Google and Microsoft or Apple doing it. They wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't important. What are you missing that's in terms of the priority of it? It's clear, and if you are comfortable joking with them, what are you missing? If you're coming into a different company, you might not have that relationship, but it's possible that they're missing something that's important to them. Another thing is, it's not always a huge investment. Start with the little things. Start with the easy things. Get the process going, or say, okay, we'll focus on the top 3 primary user journeys as we talk about. Let's do those. Just get those done, and we'll see what kind of response that it gets. You can do a blog posting, or app is more accessible, or experience is more accessible. You can build up the language and build up the momentum. But the hardest thing is that first argument, because it's usually at a point where you don't know what motivates them. So then you need to have a conversation. Well, what is most important to you? Because it's not as expensive as you think. It's not as hard as you think. And there are ways we can make it easy and get started. But understanding what motivates them is the hardest thing. And if you can do it in their language, then it's a win. Then you can get started.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I'll get rolling then.
Hold on.
All right. Jarin, you want to take over from here?
Sure. I mean, first, I thought this was mind blowing.
Yes, it was
and
incredible
super
too.
interesting what you had to say, and I think it's fantastic that you wanted to spend some time with us. So before we move on to Harris, I would love everyone if they could post like a clap emoji or anything celebratory in the chat to thank Christopher for his talk, and we'll see you back in a little bit for the panel later. So thanks very much, Christopher.